Week 11 is up and running. Welcome into this week's episode of the SportsRoom Talk Show. I am Unger to the Max, and off to my right, you want to introduce yourself?
How's it going, everybody? My name is Mac. Back on air. It's great to be here, man. Great that we could sit down here for hour and a half or so and talk about the oldest rivalry in AFC history, and in my opinion, one of the best rivalries and one of the most overlooked rivalries in NFL history between the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So for those that don't know me, my name is Mac. Well, my title name is Yinzer MAK Sports, but everyone just calls me Mac. Diehard Pittsburgh sports fan. I'm all about the Steelers, Pirates, and the Penguins in the NBA. Always had a rocky relationship with it. But I am a Chicago Bulls fan in the NBA. Not like die hard or anything. I'm just in the phase of getting back into it. But yeah, if you want Pirates content, you want Steeler content, you want Penguins content, definitely go sub up to my channel. I will be streaming the game tomorrow. So just a little bit about me before
Go
I
ahead.
just a little bit about me before I let Max take over and just talk about the game a little bit. This is actually my second YouTube channel that I've had. My old one, I was coasting on 3,000 subs until I got taken down for copyright infringement. So I had to start all over, and now I'm about to hit 1,500. So I had to rebuild it from the ground up all over again. So it really is incredible that with two channels, I've been able to hit the 1,000 sub mark. I do a lot of weekly picks on my channel, well, pretty much every week with the NFL. And believe it or not, Max, I actually do live in the Cleveland area right now because I know I'm an enemy, but like,
Tell me more, good sir.
Well, I'm actually originally from Sharon, Pennsylvania, which is like right on the Ohio PA Turnpike border. A lot of my family, most of my family's from Pittsburgh. I got some family over in Philly as well, but I got offered a job for my company's headquarters, which is in Cleveland. So I've lived in this apartment for a little over a year now. So I do live in the Cleveland area right now, but I do remain loyal to my Steelers. I do live in enemy territory, which, you know what? I'm just tucking my tail in between my legs and taking it like a man. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I'm a Yinzer that lives in Cleveland territory.
Hey, you and I can agree on one thing. I'm a Penguins fan.
Oh, are you?
Yes, I am a huge Penguins fan. I went to my first Penguins game at PPG last year against Columbus, actually.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, I have been to a Steelers game before, actually. Back in 2015, Steelers crushed the Browns. That's when we had Johnny Manziel as our quarterback. I don't want to talk about it.
I get it.
But by the way, even though as you can tell, I'm a diehard Cleveland Browns fan, I do have a little Steelers stuff. I've got that mini Steelers pennant.
Oh, cool.
I've got that little.
Oh, that's sweet, man.
Yeah.
But how do you I had no idea you were a Pens fan, man. Like I started following, like see with me, the Pirates were the first team that I ever truly loved. I got into them when I was about 6 years old.
Yeah.
And then the Steelers the next year. My family was never really big into hockey because, the Pens were founded in 1967, and my uncle and my grandparents, may God rest their souls, they are the three biggest inspirations for me for becoming a Pittsburgh sports fan, because that's where, they come from. My uncle got me more. What's going on, Brandon? Thanks for tuning in, buddy.
Thanks for tuning in, Brandon.
But my uncle, big football guy. My grandparents were the baseball people, so that's where my fandom comes from there. But they were never really into hockey, so that's why the Pens are special to me, because like I got into them pretty much by myself. you
Okay.
know.
Yeah. But you were talking about it earlier how this is a rivalry and stuff. I should feel the same way as a Browns fan, but I don't. In my opinion, right now, Steelers Browns, it's not a rivalry because one, the over the years, the two teams have only played in a handful of meaningful games. Of course, we had the AFC wild card game just a couple years ago, and um, the Week 17 game where we beat your backups to get into the playoffs to set up that rematch. But other than that, and I guess you could say the Thursday night game that ended with Myles Garrett slamming the helmet on Mason Rudolph, other
Mhm.
than that, I feel like the Steelers and Browns haven't really had that many meaningful games between them. And also, when you look at it, Pittsburgh has dominated Cleveland as of late. You know, like, for example, this season, the Browns, I think, were projected to win that game on it back in week 2 on Monday Night Football in Pittsburgh. What happened? Steelers won. So, and Ben Roethlisberger just made a living in Cleveland.
Well, everyone is entitled to their opinion, and I will not disagree with you. But the thing with me is that, see, ever since I started watching football,
Mhm.
obviously the Steelers have been one of the best teams in the NFL. 2 Super Bowl titles, 3 appearances, usually the winners of the AFC North.
Yep.
Pretty much a sure thing for the playoffs.
Yep.
And the Browns have been probably the worst team in the NFL.
The
So it's like,
doormat of the NFL. Just call them
yeah,
that.
yeah, so it's like every year it's like, oh, two, at least 3 guaranteed wins a year for the Steelers because we're going to sweep the Browns, and we usually beat the Bengals in Cincinnati. So it's like, oh, it's 3 guaranteed, at least 3 guaranteed wins a year, sometimes 4. But lately, I would say ever since that 2017 season when the Browns went 0-16, and when we swept the Browns then, that was kind of like the turning point of this becoming a rivalry again. Because if you remember, back in week 1 of the following season, we actually tied with you guys.
Right, when Tyrod Taylor was our
Yeah.
starting quarterback. Good God. I do
Yeah,
remember that.
and then obviously the next year, Big Ben had to miss pretty much the whole season with his shoulder surgery that was close to needing Tommy John,
Right.
and it just kind of kickstarted a trend where we couldn't sweep you guys, and then 2020 came, and the thing with me, if there's one thing you got to know about me, man, when it
Mhm.
comes down to Mike Tomlin, I am not a Tomlin guy. Okay,
Really?
yeah, I'm
Why
not a
not?
Tomlin. Well, the thing with me, there's a lot of aspects to it. It's
Okay.
because it's because, to me, when the Steelers won that Super Bowl back in the 08-09 season.
Against
y-
Arizona.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Santonio
Still,
Holmes.
yes, yeah, still, it was the greatest moment for me as a Steeler fan. I'll never forget it,
Oh,
But
that
you got,
James Harrison pick 6 was
yeah,
incredible.
but you got to know something here, brother. Okay,
Go ahead.
that roster with that 08-09 team, for as dominant as it was, 18 out of the 22 starters in the Super Bowl were Bill Cowher's players. And then you go to 2 years later when we were in 45 against Green Bay, it was down to 11 out of 22. So you're down to half of Cowher's players, half of Tomlin's players. And then obviously that kickstarted the trend that we have now where it's only been 3 playoff wins in over a decade. So you fast forward to 2016 when we finally beat the Bengals in the playoffs, and I put that in quote marks because let's face it, the Bengals lost that game more than we won it. Okay,
Mhm.
all the like here's the thing. Okay, Big Ben got hurt in that game. Landry Jones has to come in. It's under the 2-minute warning. We're trailing 16-15. Landry Jones throws a pick to Vontaze Burfict. and the Bengals are in prime position to extend the lead. We still would have had all 3 of our timeouts remaining. Realistically, the Bengals, all they had to do was just take knees. And realistically, with how much Tomlin loves using his timeouts, we would have used all 3 of our timeouts. Then on 4th down, Bengals kick a field goal, go up by 4. Ben was going to come back in that game regardless. I just know it. That's just who he was. Okay. You would have had an injured quarterback, not at 100%, try to drive down the length of a football field with no timeouts remaining, down by 4. Typically a situation you lose. Instead, the Bengals run a play, fumble the ball, and that gives us another chance. And that's when I knew we were going to win, because Marvin Lewis did it again. So that's why I say that we should only have 2 playoff wins since Super Bowl 45, because the Bengals lost that game more than we won it. And the biggest reason that I'm not a Tomlin guy is because he's not prepared when it comes to playing against elite competition.
Like Kansas City, Miami.
Exactly. Now, I understand the Chiefs are the closest thing to the next dynasty in the NFL. They got a magnificent team over there, but it's like Tomlin's just never prepared. He has the same game plan, the same type of defense. And that wild card game against the Browns that we had, where Ian's guys came into our place and whooped us 28 points in the first quarter. That's a game we don't talk about over here. So
fair enough.
Fair enough. That right there made me lose a ton of respect for Tomlin, because you guys weren't without your head coach, and you were without a significant amount of starters for that game as well.
Correct.
You get out-coached by a team who doesn't even have their head coach and is down multiple starters. And the very first play of the game was shades of Super Bowl 48, where the snap goes over the head and into the end zone for a touchdown.
Right, but you guys were able to come back against us and make it a game.
Yeah, we were, but the thing is that we got ourselves into a predicament where we had to, because Ben kept turning the ball over, and it was pretty much just him stat padding and garbage time against the Browns playing prevent defense. And then this year, when we got our doors blown off by Houston with a rookie head coach and a rookie QB, with an O-line that was down 5 of their starters, who had given up the most sacks this year when we led the league in sacks at that time, that right there was like, Tomlin, I'm done with you, bro. For real.
Yeah, but when you look at it, Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season during his time with the Steelers. That's part of the reason why I respect the Steelers. I don't even dislike you guys. See, like, that's the thing. If this were a rivalry, I should have to say I don't like the Steelers and all this and that. And right now, I don't feel that way. But you look at what the Steelers have done. 6 Super Bowl titles. The Rooney family has just done a magnificent job as the ownership group for the Steelers. Chuck Noll, right to Bill Cowher, to Mike Tomlin. That's what the Steelers and the Ravens, for that matter, that's why those 2 teams are so successful. They stay with the same head coach for years on end. They stay with their quarterback. Like, how many years was Big Ben with the Steelers? From like 2004 to last season, I think.
18 years.
Yeah. You look at Baltimore. John Harbaugh's been with the Ravens for years. I mean, they had Joe Flacco for a while, and they got a Super Bowl out of that. They won multiple AFC North Division titles. That's my biggest issue with the Browns, is they just go through head coach and general manager and quarterback so quickly. It's like, can we stay with the same group? Now, we seem to be doing that now with Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, but we don't have our quarterback situation figured out, because when we traded for Deshaun Watson, which personally I was not a fan of that move, given all of his baggage, but hey, the Haslams pulled the trigger on it. We gave him $230 million fully guaranteed, thinking he's going to be able to get back to the Houston version of Deshaun Watson. And first year, he's dealing with his suspension. And then the second year, can't stay on the field due to injuries and whatnot. And in the times he has played, it hasn't looked good. He's only had like one or two halves where he's looked like the old Deshaun Watson. And I would say that was in the second half last week against Baltimore, where now we know he was dealing with a broken shoulder. And I believe it was the first half against Tennessee. Other than that, I've been like, what are we getting from Deshaun Watson? And of course, now he's done for the season. And we're starting rookie quarterback out of UCLA, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. This is his second career start because his first one, he basically didn't, from what I understand, he didn't know he was going to play until like the day of against Baltimore back in week 4. I think I have that correct. And he went out there and looked absolutely terrible. Browns got stomped 28-3. We did not pull a New England Patriots. But I look at it, I'm like, he's a rookie quarterback, and he's going against a defensive player of the year candidate, TJ Watt, a guy who has won defensive player of the year in the past, and Alex Highsmith. That's not to disrespect the rest of the Steelers defense.
I get you.
Those are the two names that stand out for me. And I'm like, DTR is going to get eaten alive by those two. I'm like, if the Browns want to win this game, I need Amari Cooper to step up. I need Elijah Moore to step up. I need David Njoku to step up. I need the skill position players. We can't just run the ball, because you know that with Deshaun Watson out, Pittsburgh's going to stack the box and be like, we know you're going to want to run the ball with a rookie quarterback. We're not going to let you do that. Amari Cooper, you need to step up. Prove to me that you're a number 1 wide receiver. He's shown flashes of it, but not on a consistent basis. David Njoku, prove to me that you can be a legitimate tight end. Elijah Moore, show me why we traded for you over the offseason with the New York Jets. David Bell, prove to me that you can be like that number 2 wide receiver. I think we got Marquise Goodwin. Let me see him step up and be that number 3. Whereas like with you guys, you've got Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. You have all these skill position players, but again, you guys have quarterback questions too, because I've heard Steeler fans, they're not sold on Kenny Pickett. Are you?
Well, there's a lot that I'd like to piggyback off with what you said.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that you can't keep running the ball against us because it's going to become one-dimensional.
Exactly.
Well, here's the thing about it. I think the Browns' best chance of beating us tomorrow comes down to 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 is ironically running the ball. Because, sure, I mean, you look at our defense, it's like, oh, we got TJ on the left and Alex Highsmith on the other side. Alex Highsmith's been playing like he's earned his extension. He's turned in 2 phenomenal years in back-to-back years. And obviously, TJ is always a factor. He has 10.5 sacks on the season. And then you take a look at the rest of the defense with the interior, very hit and miss. And for a while, it looked like it was doing well because Quan Alexander, who we got before the season began, was stepping up to the reins. Cole Holcomb was a great compliment to him as well. And for the times that we put Mark Robinson in there, he's been, doing well as well. But 2 things come with that. Number 1, Quan Alexander and Cole Holcomb are both done for the rest of the season with injuries.
Okay.
So that's obviously a big, big blow right there to the run defense right there. But even if they were healthy enough to go for tomorrow, I still don't feel too confident about stopping the run because we're actually bottom tier with stopping the run this year. You look at all our games that we've had this year. Week 1 against San Francisco, CMC tore us a new one on the ground. The Monday night game with Yinz guys back in week 2. Sure, Nick Chubb, hopefully he's okay. Hopefully he can play the game again. I hope to God it's not a career ender because, something like you said, yeah, I don't like anyone in the AFC North. I don't like the Browns either, but I've always loved Nick Chubb. He was always one of my favorite players, one of my favorite current players in the NFL right now. I love Nick Chubb. I would love to have him as my running back. It's just a very unfortunate hit that he took from Minkah because a lot of people saying that's a dirty hit. Look, buddy, I played defensive end. I played defensive tackle in high school, and you are taught when you're going up against an assertive ball carrier like that, you are taught to go from the waist down against an aggressive ball carrier like that. It's just a very unfortunate football hit right there. I hope he's okay. I hope he can get back on the field soon. Hope it's not a career ender, but stop saying that it's a dirty hit because it's not. Anyway, Nick Chubb was having a good game against us. Jerome Ford busted like a 70-yard run against us that was close to being a touchdown. So it's like even with the best running back in the game gone, we still can't stop the run. Then week 3 comes. Josh Jacobs, who was my biggest concern, not just for that game, but on Christmas Eve of last year, held him in check. And then after that, it was like the run game did whatever the hell they wanted to do against us. Couldn't stop the run against Houston. Lamar's legs are always a big factor when we play the Ravens, even though that when it comes to him passing the ball against us, he's very turnover prone. Mm-hmm. Then we had our bye week after that. Failed to stop the run against the Rams in week 7. Travis Etienne had a good day against us in week 8 when we played Jacksonville. And then Derrick Henry's been quiet all year on a Thursday night game that we had against Tennessee the next week. And so we were able to limit him again, thankfully. I never take Derrick Henry lightly because Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb, I never, ever take lightly. I think they're the 2 best running backs in the game as of right now.
Okay.
And then last week, obviously, Green Bay could run the ball efficiently against us. So I counter your argument with saying that you do need to run the ball against us because with Cam Hayward missing half the season, and now that he's been activated, now we're down our 2 best run stoppers in Quan Alexander and Cole Holcomb for the rest of the year. And with Cam Hayward still being able to stop the run, I think with us, you got to get Keanu Benton involved more, and we've seen glimpses of it. Keanu Benton's been real good with stopping the run. I say it all the time with him if you tune into any of my streams or my previews. Gives me big Casey Hampton, big snacks Casey Hampton vibes from back in the day. The big mean old nose tackle that we used to have back with Cowher's defenses. We need to have Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward be the substitutes for pretty much Quan Alexander and Cole Holcomb for this game. But that's also your guys' best chance at winning with stopping the run because we're weak with stopping it. And secondly, your guys' key to victory, it has to come down to, like you mentioned, Amari Cooper and David Njoku, which is where, Amari Cooper's easily, at least in my opinion, you may have a different opinion than me, but in my opinion, Amari Cooper's been your guys' best offensive player this year when it wasn't Nick Chubb.
I agree with that, but he hasn't played consistently enough for me to say he's our definitive number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, it's not a hard argument to make either. I mean, he draws a lot of double teams, and I think we can definitely do that if Tomlin would take his head from out of his you-know-where and put JPJ in there and shadow him the entire game. I think this is a game where we really need to have Minkah play in the game. I still don't know if he's going to play because he's been dealing with an injury as well. But if Minkah plays, he definitely has to be on David Njoku. We have to double up Amari Cooper. And just like I said, JPJ, just make your rookies, get out there and use the kids. I mean, you traded up with New England for 14 to get Broderick Bleepin Jones as your offensive lineman. And granted, we started him at the left side because he was naturally a left tackle, but ever since he switched on over to the right side, it seems like he's been doing a little bit better at that juncture. So, like I said, use the kids. Use Broderick Jones. Keep using JPJ. Keep using Keanu Benton. And people keep saying this in my streams or my videos all the time about Najee. I'm very up and down with him. 1 week I love him. 1 week I hate it, or not hate. 1 week, you know what I mean. I'm very up and down with him.
He's one of my starting running backs in fantasy. So
yeah, it's like he's had back-to-back 1,000-yard rush seasons to start his career, which sounds really good considering the O-lines that we've had. But to me, it's like he's getting yards, but he's not really improving because it's the same type of thing that he tries to do with being a downhill run. Dancing around in the backfield, just waiting for that open holes to come. So, I mean, that's why his play style is like 1 week he rushes for like 30 yards total. The next week he can get like 80 to 90 yards. And in the past couple weeks, he's been doing a lot better because the whipping boy for the Pittsburgh Steelers has always been Matt Canada. Granted, Matt Canada has actually called some good
yeah, Matt Canada has
run
been
game.
Okay. Sorry, you're on my end, your screen keeps freezing, your audio keeps cutting out.
Oh, that's okay. But what I was saying is that over the past couple of weeks, Matt Canada's offense has actually looked a little bit better because he's been incorporating the run game, and that's opened up the door for Najee. And people
We apologize for the technical difficulties. But I'll pick up here a little bit. Matt Canada, yeah, he's come down to the sideline from the booth, and it looks like the Steelers' offense is actually finding its groove. Sorry, your screen froze again.
No, you're okay. But I was talking about Darnell Washington.
Yeah. The wide receiver from Oklahoma State.
Absolutely. I feel like if we use Darnell Washington the right way, where he's a phenomenal blocking tight end, that can open up the door more for Najee Harris. And people say that with my content all the time, and I agree with them. So definitely with us, keep using what got you in this, what got you this momentum over the past couple of weeks, which is keep running the ball. Jaylen Warren had 100 yards against Green Bay last week, and Najee had 82. We ran for over 200 yards on the ground against Green Bay. And while Cleveland's defense isn't terrible, but not great with stopping the run, I feel like that's our best chance offensively to come through with the win. Because I'm just saying it right now, brother. If it comes down to Kenny Pickett trying to beat you with the defense that Yinz guys got, I don't feel very confident with it.
I mean, I was just saying, like, your offense has certainly improved over the past couple weeks, given that Matt Canada has come down from the booth to the sidelines. It's amazing what kind of difference that can make. I mean, you look at San Francisco's defense, for example, it happened there too. But yeah, with Kenny Pickett, I know a lot of Steeler fans are questioning him right now. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's he's not suited for Matt Canada's offense. I don't know if he's just like a average quarterback or what it is, but he seems like he's not viewed highly in the eyes of Steelers fans. Am I right there?
It's like an even mix with Kenny Pickett right now with the majority of the fan base. I'm actually one of the people that say it's him, which is why the offense has been what it is. I mean, look, I am probably the last person on earth who would defend Matt Canada because I definitely do think he is a problem with the offense. But like I said, his play calling has gotten better over the past couple weeks with incorporating the run. You look at last week against Green Bay. We won that we won that game in spite of Kenny Pickett. Because Kenny Pickett, what's up, Steelers freak? He says Pickett isn't an NFL starting QB. He is a backup. So, like you see right there, a comment like that, he's part of the people that say that Kenny Pickett's the problem. Like Kenny Pickett, other than Mike Tomlin, is the most polarizing figure with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Let me just put it to you like that. There are people that want him gone, and then there's people that just adore him. And part of the reason with that is because, he played for the Pitt Panthers in college. So he's obviously a big fan favorite in Pittsburgh. But like with me, I will always sit down here and give Kenny Pickett credit when it's due, but I will also sit down here and criticize him. My dad.
Which you need to do at times.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I just sit down here and say, well, Kenny Pickett's just in his second season. Oh, Kenny Pickett's still young. That's being a homer. Okay. You have to be. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with being. I mean, God knows how many times I've sat down here and criticized the Steelers. How many times?
Oh, yeah. I criticized Baker Mayfield all the time when he was our starting quarterback. After he suffered that shoulder injury against Houston, I said, don't try to be a tough guy. Like, if you need to go get the surgery, get the damn surgery.
Right.
But he tried to be like, because Cleveland and Pittsburgh are both like blue collar cities where only the hardworking people kind of survive. And
that's right.
He tried to take on that persona and be like, oh, I'm a tough guy and all this.
No, you're
not.
And
I'm like, no, Baker, you are clearly not healthy. Go get the surgery. So I get that that situation and this situation with Kenny Pickett are not the same, but you were just talking about, how you criticize Kenny Pickett. So I was making a comparison to how I was criticizing Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. And you see, that's another dynamic, in my opinion, for this rivalry here, because Cleveland and Pittsburgh, I think one of the biggest reasons why these two franchises are such big rivals with each other is because Pittsburgh and Cleveland, they're very similar cities. They're both small market, both Rust Belt towns, both blue-collar, hardworking people there. And, it's the fan base, they're always butting heads with one another because they're very similar fan bases,
And we're only 2 hours apart from each other.
Yeah. You'll see it, man. Like the Midwest and the Rust Belt and the East Coast, they're very tough with their teams. Cities like there's cities, to where like you need to be a tough guy in order to survive with the team that you're playing for and with the city, because you're going to be at the mercy of the fans 24/7. Pittsburgh's one of those cities. Cleveland's one of those cities. New York is one of those cities. Philly's one of those cities. Chicago, Boston, you name it. Like, if you're not a tough guy and you can't handle a tough environment, you will never last. Period, point blank. And that's why I get on Kenny Pickett the way that I do. And that's why I get on the Steelers when they play bad. That's why I get on the Pirates all the time. That's why I get on the Pens when they're not playing well. Because like I was saying, I sit down here and go like, oh, well, it's okay. This just happened. We need to fix it. It's like, I use this time, but yeah, like oh, sorry about that. But like I use this comparison all the time. Imagine you're at work, and I'm a factory worker, so I'm a blue collar worker myself. Okay. But imagine like at work, you arrive late every day, like 5 minutes late every day, and every day you tell your boss a different excuse for why you're late. Like, what do you think your boss is going to do? Do you think he's just going to go like, "Oh, it's okay, just get to work on time," or is he going to be like, or is he just going to have a talk with you, reprimand you, or maybe even fire you? That's how I treat my teams.
Right. And Steelers Freak says the money at Vegas has no faith in Pickett. Steelers are 1.5-point underdogs against the Browns right now, which I'm actually surprised about because I think going into this game, before we found out about Deshaun Watson, I think the Browns were like a 5.5-point favorite.
The line has changed ever since the news broke out about Watson, because before the news broke out, the Browns were at a 4.5. You can see that with my Week 11 picks video. I recorded that I usually get my picks videos recorded Tuesday night when I get home from work. I work till 11:30 every night. I'm a second shifter. So like when I recorded it, the Browns were at 4.5. And then when I uploaded it, I saw that the line changed to the Steelers actually being a 1-point favorite. I'm like, what's going on? And then like literally 3 minutes later, I get an update from my phone saying Watson's going to miss the rest of the season with shoulder surgery. I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah. And then like literally the next day, the line changed to the Browns being the favorite. Then I go to bed, the Steelers are the favorites again. Next morning, the line has been like a roller coaster ever since Watson's news came out. The Browns are the favorites, then it's the Steelers. Browns, Steelers. Like, I have no clue who's favored to win this game. That's why I think it's like dead even now,
Yeah. But this is going to be classic AFC North. Hopefully no injuries this time because
oh, for sure.
I mean, we saw what happened with Thursday Night Football with Mark Andrews and Joe Burrow, and we know what happened earlier in the season with Nick Chubb in Pittsburgh. So hopefully, let's just put our weapons down. A good, hard-hitting, bring your hard hat type of AFC North game with no injuries.
For sure. And, hey, I think the one thing Browns and Steelers fans can agree on, Baltimore. Yeah. Because, hey, the Ravens are the old Browns.
That is true.
That's your guys' team over there. Modell won 2 Super Bowls with your old team. And then, of course, before the Browns moved to Baltimore, we all know how fierce the rivalry was between the Steelers and the Browns. So it's like basically the Steelers and Browns play each other 4 times a year. So that's why. So it's like we got the old Browns and then the new Browns, you know? So like that's the one thing Browns and Steelers fans can agree on.
Yes. The Ravens are definitely my most hated team in the AFC North.
Right there with you.
Yes.
And that's what I was saying earlier. Like, I don't like any team in the AFC North because I would never pull for a division rival. But if I had to pick the one I hate the most, it's easily the Ravens.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. What if there's a game where, like, the Browns are playing, let's say, the Chargers, and if the Browns win, then the Steelers get in the playoffs? Would you root for the Browns in that situation?
That's a good question, actually. I would more so root for the Chargers to lose because it's like, yeah, technically that would mean I'm rooting for the Browns to win. It's like, I always say this to like people in my content when they ask me questions like this. It's like, hey, I'm pulling for you guys to beat LA. But then I go like, I'm like, hey, don't get too comfortable with it. It's more me rooting for the Chargers to lose than for Yinz to win,
Right.
But like, The Browns, I'd say, are second on my list just because of the history. But at the same time, it's like I can empathize with them a little bit because I know what it's. Yeah, it's like I know what it's like to root for a loser. Believe it or not, I'm a Pirates fan in baseball. The
Oh, I'm so
first time,
sorry.
yeah, the first time they even had a winning season in my lifetime, I was a senior in high school. You know, but yeah, but yeah, like I can, and plus I respect the hell out of that fan base. They are they're one of the most passionate, loyal, diehard fan bases I've ever seen in any sport. Steeler Freak says trench warfare, 90s ball, the punters and the field goal kickers could be who wins. I agree, definitely. It very well could come down to that. I don't see a lot of points being put on the board at all. I think this is going to be a defensive dominated game.
Yeah, and if you're talking about the defense, I mean, we have the best defense in the NFL.
Statistically, yeah.
Myles Garrett, he should be in the MVP discussion.
Oh, no doubt about it. I say the same thing with TJ Watt.
I would say right now, it's between him and TJ Watt for Defensive Player of the Year. That's no disrespect to Micah Parsons, no disrespect
absolutely.
to Nick Bosa or any of the other guys, but Myles Garrett is just on another planet right now, and TJ Watt is dragging this team, kicking and screaming to 6-3. I mean, for God's sakes, you guys have been outgained in every single game you've played. Outgained. And yet here you are at 6-3.
Definitely.
I don't get it.
Honestly, like you put all four of them names like in a hat, shuffle it up, and then just pick one out. You can't go wrong with who wins it. They're all phenomenal choices for Defensive Player of the Year. They're all great in their own way, which actually
can't forget Micah Parsons either.
Yeah, absolutely. Which actually, I've had a question that I want to ask you, and pretty much I ask every Browns fan I encounter with this.
Go ahead.
The TJ Watt, Myles Garrett debate. That is never going to go away.
No.
Because we know that these are the best players, not only with the defensive side of the ball for the respective teams, but you could honestly say they're the best players on each team, period. So with that being,
Browns, I would say Nick Chubb is in there when he's healthy.
Well, you could argue that, and I definitely agree with you on that. But like with the TJ Myles Garrett debate,
okay,
who do you think personally? Who do you think is better?
Oh man, they're both like great in their own way. They each have a terrific skill set that allows them to just harass the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at what TJ Watt has done. I mean, he's had to do it more so on his own than Myles Garrett because, we've had Jadeveon Clowney with him. Now we have Zadarius Smith with him. Whereas I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like TJ Watt's had to do it more so individually. So I would give the slight edge to TJ in that regard.
Yeah, with me, it's very hard to pick. As Steeler Freak says, Google, the luckiest team using analytics. The Steelers are number one. That plus leading in turnovers are why we – yeah, see, it's stuff like that I just don't disagree with because, I mean, if it wasn't for the defense, if it wasn't for opportunistic turnovers, we could easily have, like, only 2 or 3 wins. But getting back to what I was saying, I find it very difficult for me to say who's better because they play different positions.
Yeah.
TJ's an outside linebacker, Myles Garrett's a defensive end. So
right.
it's kind of like how people ask, who do you think's better between Troy Polamalu and Ed Reed?
Oh,
because Yeah, they were both safeties, but they played different positions. Troy was strong safety. Ed Reed was free safety.
The
So it's
way
like
Troy Polamalu was able to time up plays and just start running like a
absolute,
freaking bullet. I'm like, how
yeah,
did he time that so perfectly?
absolutely.
I would watch like a bunch of Steelers games back in the day because they were always like in that 4 o'clock window or the
Mhm.
nationally televised games. And I would just watch Troy Polamalu and I'm like, how did you time it up so perfectly? Like, when he blocked the field goal, I forget who that. I think it was against the Chargers, if I remember
Yeah, I was
correctly.
against San Diego at the
But
time.
I'm like, how did you time that so perfectly to know right when they were going to hike the ball, get over the line of scrimmage, and block it? Like,
Right.
nobody should be able to do that. And yet, Troy was like, this is easy.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, you look at the stats. Obviously, Paul Mullen is going to have more tackles than Ed Reed, and he's going to have more safety blitzes and safety sacks than Ed Reed does, because that's what strong safeties do. They play closer to the line. They're pretty much like, a nickel linebacker, but also like they go for like short yardage plays. They cover tight ends better. They stop the run better than they do. And they just overall have better snap. They have better snap anticipation because that's where they're placed on the defense. So obviously Paul Mullen is going to lead in that. But Ed Reed, double the interceptions that Paul Mullen has, double the, pass deflections, all that stuff. And you take a look at like I'm not a PFF guy, but like you look at the PFF rankings, obviously Ed Reed's going to have a better one than Paul Mullen in coverage because that's what free safeties do. They're the ball hawks. So like, again, it's like, honestly, you can't go wrong with either one. But getting back to what I was saying about TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, TJ is a linebacker, well, on the outside. Myles Garrett's defensive end. So it's like, yeah, Garrett's going to have more tackles. Garrett's going to, get more pressure rates. But then you look at TJ Watt, he's obviously going to get more sacks because he plays on the outside. And you also got to take into consideration that no pass rusher in the league over the past 2 years has been double teamed more than TJ Watt.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
like I said, I feel like TJ Watt, he has some good pieces around him, but he's mostly had to do it on his own. Whereas,
yeah,
like, we have Zadarius Smith with Myles Garrett now. He's been paired with Jadeveon Clowney. Like, I feel like
yeah,
Myles Garrett is the Batman, and he's usually had some type of Robin. Whereas
yeah,
you look at
exactly.
TJ Watt, I don't know. I don't think he's really had anybody to take the pressure off of him. That's just
Yeah,
my perspective.
yeah, exactly. And I think we finally found that guy now with Alex Highsmith, who we drafted, because before it was Bud Dupree, where I was always on board with Bud Dupree, but a lot of Steeler fans were losing patience with him because he was injury prone and he was just very inconsistent with the pass rush. So we moved on from him. Then we thought it was, then we go ahead and take Alex Highsmith, and then he's looked flawless. TJ missed half of last year with the pec injury. Highsmith stepped up, got 14 and a half sacks. So it's like, I think TJ Watt and Alex, no matter who you pick between TJ and Garrett, you can't go wrong either way. But one thing you cannot deny at all:
Mm-hmm.
TJ and Highsmith and Garrett and Smith, easily the two best 1-2 punches with pass rushes in the league. You
Yes.
cannot deny that.
I want to go back to this comment. Google the luckiest team using analytics. You could say we've been the luckiest team
Really?
over the past few weeks. I mean, the reason we won that game against San Francisco was because Moody missed the kick at the end. We got a couple lucky breaks on the road in Indianapolis. with the pass interference call, and I think there was a defensive holding call. You look at the game against Baltimore last week, we got a few lucky breaks. So, I mean, there's some fans who are like, the Browns have gotten favorable ref ball this time. And to be honest with you, I have no idea, given what's happened for us this season, having to play 3 different starting quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I have no idea how we're 6-3 and in position to make the playoffs. I mean, you look at it right now, 3 of the 4 teams in the AFC North would make the playoffs if the season ended today.
Mm-hmm.
Not the 3 teams I expected. That's no disrespect to the Steelers, but I kind of figured with Deshaun Watson back, we would be in a position to make the playoffs. I thought Baltimore was going to, bounce back with Lamar. And, of course, Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and all that. And instead, we've got Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. Yeah. Again, that's no disrespect towards the Steelers because I know what Mike Tomlin's done. But I'm like, okay, the Steelers' run has to end eventually, right? And I just thought the Browns had closed the gap. And, the Ravens, like I said, I thought they were going to take the next step. And I thought, okay, the Bengals have been to the AFC Championship game the last 2 seasons. They were in the Super Bowl. We're like a couple minutes away from winning the Super Bowl. So I'm like, okay, those 3 teams are going to get to the playoffs. And the Steelers are going to get kind of left behind. And Mike Tomlin's like, nope, I'm going to continue my winning ways. You know what I say about the Steelers, actually?
What's that?
I have turned Mike Tomlin into a verb. They are Mike Tomlining their way to 6-3. Is that a fair assessment? They are Mike Tomlining their way to 6-3. Or they have Mike Tomlin their way to 6-3. Grammar people, don't jump on me. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that when you become a verb, you're doing something right at least, But the thing with me is that this division has definitely been stacked all year. Steeler Freak says the Bengals can't figure out to have an O-line to protect Burrow. That's costing them.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mike Tomlin is Houdini. That's exactly what I was just saying. Like, he's turned himself into a damn verb. Like, the Steelers have Tomlined their way to 6-3, and they're going to Tomlin their way to another winning season. Because Mike Tomlin just does not know what it means to have a losing season. But what you were saying?
The thing with me is that, like I said earlier, I think it's so much that Tomlin is so heavily reliant on the defense, because he's, everyone talks about how we've only had 3 head coaches since '69. But the thing about it is that it's a double-edged sword. It's both a blessing and a curse, because like any fan outside of this fan base would be like, wow, consistency, winning culture.
I was talking about that exact thing.
It's the right people at the right time, I guess. How do they do it? But it's also a sign that shows unwillingness to change and complacency. Because the Steelers started to go through this in the 80s, well before I was born. I was born tail end of 95. I'm going to be 28 in 3 weeks. But
okay, you're only like 2 years older than me, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm 26.
Yeah. And
so I'm 97.
Yeah, fun fact. Me and my older brother are actually 369 days apart. And
really?
Yeah, he's December 3rd, 94. I'm December 7th, 95. And here's an interesting fact about our season this year. The Steelers play both on my brother's birthday and my birthday this year.
Oh,
On
really?
my brother's birthday, we play the Cardinals at home, and then 4 days later, we have our Thursday nighter with New England on my birthday.
Got it.
But yeah, going back to what I was saying, it started off like that in the 80s. And the players were starting to age. The offense was lacking. We had that terrible mistake in 83 where we passed on Dan Marino because it's like, yeah, in retrospect, we just moved on from Terry Bradshaw. We just need to find another quarterback that can ride the coattails with the defense that we got. And Dan Marino was right there. Same school as Kenny Pickett, went to Pitt, and he's a Pittsburgh native too. We passed on him. Miami picks him up. His 84 season is one of the greatest QB seasons that any QB ever had. So it's like one of the biggest what ifs in NFL history is like, what if the Steelers drafted Dan Marino in 83? We could probably, I don't mean to sound spoiled or anything because I'm incredibly blessed that we have 6 Super Bowls, but it's like if we didn't pass on Dan Marino in 83,
What's up,
we could
Mile
probably be
High?
sitting on about 9 or 10. How you doing, brother? Thanks for tuning in. Like, I don't mean to sound spoiled or anything, but we don't pass on Dan Marino with the defenses that we had later in the 90s. We could be sitting on about 9 or 10 rings right now.
Yeah. Well, let me
But
just say this about your Super Bowls. In my opinion, you guys, the Pittsburgh Steelers, are the only team that actually has 6 Super Bowls. I don't believe all 6 of the Patriots
really,
Super Bowl titles are legitimate. No, I do
I
not.
hope Lady was listening to that.
Yeah, I firmly believe that some of the Patriots championships are not legit, and you guys are the only team in the NFL that has 6 Super Bowl championships. I don't care what the record book says. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, but getting back to what I was saying, so Chuck Noll retires after 91 when the Steelers had back-to-back losing seasons, and the team at that point was just burnt out, and they had a bunch of nobodies on the team with a rebuilding defense. And it's like, okay, Chuck Noll's outdated. He did his time in Pittsburgh. Time to find another head coach. You bring in Bill Cowher in 92. Pittsburgh, Crafton, PA native, just outside of Pittsburgh. He knows the city. Defensive minded coach. So is Chuck Noll. Bill Cowher comes in with a whole new philosophy with defense and with a team of nobodies in that 92 season. Steelers go 11-5, win the division, make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Cowher was there 15 years. And this is where I was getting into what I was saying about Tomlin earlier. When Cowher came, he took over a burnout team that was rebuilding. And then 3 years later, he took us to the Super Bowl against Dallas, which I don't talk about either. Thanks, Neil O'Donnell. But technically, it did happen in my lifetime because it happened in January of '96. But I was a newborn when that Super Bowl happened. The way I see it, unless you sat down in front of the TV and understood what was going on, you didn't see it happen. Okay.
Fair.
But like that was Cowher, took the Steelers to the playoffs 6 years in a row when he got hired. Then he went through a rebuilding phase, with burnout players and young players and didn't really have a good quarterback. The best QB that Cowher had before Big Ben was drafted, in my opinion, was Cordell Stewart. But it's not like Cordell Stewart was some superstar, I always felt like Cordell Stewart was very unfairly criticized with the fan base because I was always a big Cordell fan. He was the QB that he was our QB when I first became a fan. And I actually liked him. I thought he was great with gadget plays. I thought he was great with wildcat plays. But it's not like he was some kind of superstar, He was pretty much like what Lamar was before Lamar came here.
Or Mike Vick.
Yeah, pretty much. And then obviously you get Tommy Maddox the rest of the way. He has that comeback season. He has that really good one-year wonder season in 02, which that was the first full season that I started watching football when Tommy Maddox was here. Then 03 we had a bad season. It was just Maddox just showing that he's just not a franchise guy. And so it's like, oh, so we have a bad year in 03. Jerome Bettis was injured most of the season, so our run game is gone.
Hall of Famer.
Yeah, one of my favorite players. But a guy I personally met too, by the way, great guy.
Oh, you've met Jerome Bettis? Where and how?
I was in Pittsburgh about 5 years ago, and I caught a Pirates game. And on my way back home, I stopped at his restaurant that he had at the time on the North Shore. It's closed now. He closed it down, but at the time it was still open. And he's walking around everybody's table. He stops at my table and he just goes like, "Hey, how's the food?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's good." And I did like a double take.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's like I froze in time. I'm like, "You're the boss," Yeah, he sat down with me a little bit. We talked Steeler football for about 5 minutes. Great guy, very great, nice, down-to-earth guy. I asked if I could get a pic with him, but he said no because he's trying to keep a low profile, which I understood. But yeah, definitely he very classy guy, very down-to-earth, friendly guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, then obviously 04 comes like, okay, we need a QB. And there's this kid from Miami of Ohio who had a record-shattering season in Ben Roethlisberger. And I don't mean to trash talk a little bit, but the Browns wanted him too, and they passed on Big Ben.
They did.
He
the
fell
Browns
into us.
have it. I mean, you. I don't need to tell you this because you've seen it with us. We've gone through so many quarterbacks. It's not even funny. Like there's in Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson, Jake Delhomme, Seneca Wallace, Brandon Whedon, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, Spurgeon Wynn, Kelly Holcomb, Josh McCown, Brady Quinn, Derek Anderson. I'm not going to try and list all of them, but
you don't have to.
It's you get my point. Whereas like you guys, it was Big Ben for 18 years. Yeah, you had Landry Jones and Mason Rudolph mixed in there, but actually in the game I went to in Pittsburgh, Landry Jones started that game. He got injured, and then Big Ben came in.
I remember that. That was
relief.
I believe it was the 2015 season, if I'm not mistaken.
In Pittsburgh. Actually, you'll find this funny since I'm a Browns fan, but I know how historic the terrible towel is for Steelers fans.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm in Pittsburgh. I'm at a Steelers game. I know I'm a Browns fan. I wasn't wearing any Brown stuff at the time. But I'm like, I want to get a terrible towel. And not just because I like to get like some memento or a piece of memorabilia from when I go to other team stadiums.
I get it.
My dad wouldn't let me, but I know a lot of Browns fans are probably like, what is this guy doing? He's a Browns fan. Why would he want a terrible towel? Let me emphasize again. It's because it's a cool piece of memorabilia.
You're a fan of the game.
Yes. And I know how historic not only the terrible towel is, but I know how historic the Steelers franchise is, and I'm like, that's one of the most iconic parts of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's not to degrade or disrespect anything else about the Steelers, because like I said, they're one of the most historic franchises. But one of the first things I think of when I think of the Steelers is the terrible towel, and of course, Renegade. From
the sticks.
Yes, which nobody ever gets scores on you when they play Renegade. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Let's see. if the Steelers were out of the playoffs and the Browns were still in, I would cheer for them. But the Browns fans deserve to be rewarded for being so faithful throughout the years. That's
You see
interesting.
that. Yeah, you see that's what I was talking about earlier. Steelers freak. It's like, oh man, my team's longest old time rivals in the Super Bowl or whatever. They're in the playoffs. It's like I can't root for them, but it's like if they go far, I'll congratulate them because like I know all the crap that they've gone through in their fandom. It's nice, it's nice to see them have a little bit of enjoyment,
Yeah. I mean, Steelers freak said it earlier. Like there were dark times for the Steelers if they don't win a playoff game this season. That'll be 7 years in a row, a new ugly record since the
Yeah.
1967
And
Super Bowl era.
I'll tell you another interesting fact about me, Josh.
Go ahead.
So I'm actually the complete opposite of what my dad's family was because, like, I'm like my dad's mini me. I definitely take after my dad's side of the family.
Mhm.
I said at the beginning that a lot of my family's from Pennsylvania. My dad's family is pretty much all from PA, mainly Western PA.
Mhm.
So, like, here's the thing. My dad always tells me that I'm the most important aspect of his side of the family because I was the youngest. My dad was the youngest of 5 growing up, and then his father, my grandpa, who, like I said, may God rest his soul, he passed away last year. He was the
Sorry
youngest.
to hear that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yep.
He was the youngest as well. So he goes like, you're the youngest of the youngest of the youngest. And here's the thing about it. My dad was the youngest, and he, believe it or not, was the only Browns fan in a house of Steeler fans.
Okay.
Yeah, because like I said, I'm originally from Sharon, PA, which is right on the Ohio PA Turnpike. It's pretty evenly divided there between Browns and Steelers fans, But yeah, he was the only Browns fan in a house of Steeler fans. He was born in 64, actually, which was the last time the Browns won the championship. He was 10 months old.
Mhm.
And then you get me. I was the youngest. I just have one older brother who lives in Dormont right now in Pittsburgh with his wife. And with me, I'm the opposite. I was the only Steeler fan in a house of Browns fans. So my dad,
Wow.
yeah, so my dad actually, believe it or not, is a Browns fan, which is like him and I we always have a friendly rivalry in football. His oldest brother, who lives in New Jersey, he's a Steeler fan. So like whenever the Steelers beat the Browns, we always just tease my dad about it.
Well, then you've had plenty of opportunities
Oh
too, because
yeah.
that's what, we talked about this throughout, but that's why I can't say it's a rivalry because there hasn't, for me, like it can't just be, oh, bragging rights are on the line. No, I want it to be like, if the Steelers win, then the Browns are eliminated from the playoffs, or the Browns and Steelers are meeting and the AFC North Division title is on the line.
Or they
Like,
meet in the playoffs like they did 3 years ago.
right. That's why, for me personally, I love the Ravens Steelers rivalry because there have been multiple times where the Ravens and Steelers have met, and it's like, if the Steelers win, then the Ravens are out of the playoffs, or if the Steelers win, then the Ravens are out, or you know, you had the Antonio Brown game where he was able to stretch the ball across the
Christmas
goal
Day.
line. Yep. You had the late season game in Baltimore back in 2008. That was the year the Steelers went on to win the Super Bowl, but
And we beat the Ravens
in the
not
AFC,
only not only 3 times that season we beat the Ravens, but
AFC Championship.
we also get this. We also beat them with 3 different uniforms. The first time we beat them was a Monday night game. We were wearing our throwback jerseys that night. It was at
Those
home.
yellow ones or the Bumblebee ones?
The ones that look like our color rush right now, It was the black ones with the gold letters and numbers on it.
Okay.
With the gold helmets.
Okay.
So yeah, that was a home Monday night game. Then obviously we always wear our road whites and for road games. That was the second time we beat them in Baltimore. And then in the AFC Championship, we just wore our regular home jerseys. So not only we beat the Ravens 3 times in a season, but we beat them in 3 different uniforms.
Yeah. But you get my point though. It's
Yep.
like with the Steelers and Ravens, there's always something on the line. It hasn't been that way with the Browns and Steelers. Too many times it's just the Browns are the doormat at the AFC and the Steelers are, on their way to another winning season or whatever. And I'm just like,
Yeah, but like with me, Steelers Freak says if Kansas City loses Monday night, the Ravens will be feeling confident. Oh, for sure. But if I'm a Ravens fan, I wouldn't be feeling 100% confident because Mark Andrews is done for the rest of the season. And while Lamar has definitely had his best offensive season since his MVP year, the majority of his targets have gone to Mark Andrews. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Lamar is going to be able to adjust to that because now the Ravens have 10 days of rest.
Yeah. You guys play them in Week 18 in Baltimore.
Yep. But getting back to what I was saying, like on the surface, this doesn't feel like a rivalry, but I would say it is because there's 4 big things, in my opinion, that make something a rivalry, and I think we check off at least 3 of them.
Okay.
Number one, hatred. Definitely, these 2 teams go back to 1950. It's the most played matchup in AFC history. No franchise has beaten the Steelers more than the Browns have beaten us, and vice versa. No franchise has beaten the Browns more than us. And it spawned a lot of hatred. It spawned a lot of animosity, a lot of button heads between the fan bases. There's a check right there. Number 2, competitiveness. Like, sure, recently it hasn't been very a lot of times it hasn't been competitive.
Right.
But recently it's not a guarantee that we're going to sweep the Browns anymore. It's not a guarantee that we're going to be significantly better than them because the Browns have started to play us a lot better over the past 5 years. So it's like the games are starting to become a little bit more competitive. You know?
I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Pittsburgh leads the overall series 81-62 and 1 because
That's right.
We tied. Obviously, you beat us earlier this season, 26-22. You beat us back on January 8th, 2023, 28-14 in Pittsburgh. But we beat you back on September 22nd, 2022, 29-17 in Cleveland. And then you beat us on January 3rd, 2022 in Pittsburgh, 26-14. And then you beat us on Halloween back in 2021, 15-10. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. It's which I don't know how you guys won that game on Halloween back in 2021. It was.
I didn't see the whole game with that one because I was actually out of town for that game with I was at a Halloween party with my ex-girlfriend at the time.
Gotcha.
But so I missed that game. But
yeah, I was at that game. Unfortunately, I'm gonna skip tomorrow's game. I'm choosing not to go to every game for the Browns this season because they like to use pyrotechnics throughout the game, and that doesn't really sit well with me. So I'm choosing to skip tomorrow's game against the Steelers.
But back to what I was saying though. Number 3 for me is history. If there's some iconic moments or iconic games that you can think of or notable things about a matchup, I think it qualifies. Like you brought up the all-time series, we lead at 81-62-1. Like, a typical fan would be like, "Oh, the Steelers have always owned the Browns." Not really. Because from 1950 to 1969, the roles were reversed. The Steelers were one of the worst franchises in the NFL, and the Browns were winning all them championships. And through 40 matchups, the Browns led it 31-9. And then obviously from 1970 onward, the Steelers lead it from 1970 onward 72-31 in a tie.
I want to talk about this comment by Steelers Freak. We should have beaten the Chiefs in that divisional round.
You should have.
In Kansas City. The refs absolutely screwed us over in that
game.
Yeah,
I agree with that big time. You had that game won until the refs were like, Mahomes is the golden boy.
Yes. The Chiefs have gotten a lot of favorable calls this season. If the Chiefs are not careful, they're going to start being hated like the Patriots were.
Yeah, I got nothing against Kansas City. I got nothing against Mahomes. I like Mahomes. I got nothing against them, but it's like the bandwagon fans turn me off, Yeah. But yeah, like I was saying though, yeah, like everyone's going to be like, oh, the Steelers have always owned the Browns. Not really if you look into the all-time series, because the Browns were dominating it for the first 2 decades, and then ever since the 70s, it's been all Steelers. And then you take a look at it, they've met 3 times in the playoffs. The Steelers have won 2 out of the 3 matchups. So it's like, yeah, these two go a long way back. They have animosity with each other, and we can name some big moments. Like the worst loss in Steeler history came against the Browns week 1 of 89 at Old Three River Stadium, 51-0. And then the night the Browns came back to the league in 99, 10 years later, their first matchup was a home game against the Steelers at home. Steelers won 43-0.
Oh, that must have been fun.
Well, I was only 4 years old when that game happened, but
I was only 2.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. That's like 3 right there. But I think the one that's lacking with my 4th point, championship success. That's where the Steelers dominate it.
Yeah. Steelers Freak here is talking about like our brief conversation we just had with Kansas City about the overarching. He's saying the overarching NFL marketing strategies is Mahomes gets to 8 Super Bowls, and they'll continue to help Kansas City get there. It's all about the bank.
Yeah.
I like this. The Steelers offense sucks, and stop blaming Canada for your incompetence.
Well, Canada's definitely a problem. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, like I said earlier, dude. But his play calling has gotten better. I mean,
do you think Matt Canada is going to return as the Steelers offensive coordinator next season?
I know he's going to return because, let's face it, like I talked about earlier with head coaches, we do not fire head coaches, we don't fire coaches in general. So if Matt Canada goes, it's not because we fired him. It's because he retired or because his contract conveniently expired. Like ever since Dan Rooney passed in 2017 and Artie II took over, it's like the whole narrative with this franchise has changed. Where it was, because Dan Rooney never cared about the bottom line. He never cared about, his ego. Artie does. And he doesn't have the spine to put his foot down to head coaches and say, hey, it's not working out with you. We're going to let you go.
Steelers Freak is basically saying the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. So Artie is not going to fire Matt Canada. And he's certainly not going to fire Mike Tomlin because of A, him never having a losing season, and B, I know this is going to rub some people the wrong way because of the Rooney Rule, where they don't fire minorities.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. But yeah, like I said, those are just my thoughts on how we run the head coaching here. It's like I said, it's a big double-edged sword,
Yeah. I mean, you guys have had that stability, though. I mean, we've talked about it multiple times. Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin. The conveyor belt just keeps going. The wheel just keeps turning. But the Browns have not had that same stability, and it's one of my biggest annoyances as a Browns fan. It's like we had something with Kyle Shanahan as our offensive coordinator and Mike Penn as our head coach and Brian Hoyer as our quarterback in the 2014 season. We had something going, and then I think the Haslams were in charge at that point. They stepped in and said, no, we want to see Johnny Manziel. And that's when the wheels fell off. Like, the moment we drafted Johnny Manziel, I'm like, oh, we are so fucked. We are so fucked.
My dad even said something like that. He didn't say we're fucked, but like when they drafted Manziel, he was like, I knew they were going to draft him. I just knew it. And then he's like, we're screwed.
Yeah, that was the draft pick we got from the Indianapolis Colts in exchange for Anthony Richardson, which that has to go down as one of the worst trades in NFL history because it didn't work out for either of us.
Nope.
I have no idea why we drafted Trent. I almost said Anthony Richardson. No, Trent Richardson. I have no idea why we drafted him as high as we did.
Yeah. And Najee's been getting a lot of comparisons to Trent Richardson as well. Just because of the school, just because, they both went to Alabama.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier. Jack says, regardless of what happens, this Browns-Steelers game should be a bloodbath between Watt and Garrett. I can't decide who is the better rusher. It's tough. It really is. I mean, sure, they play different positions, and we were talking about this earlier, but they're so dead even. It's like you have to nitpick and look closely. It's like looking through a magnifying glass to find the differences between them.
The way I see it, like if you need to build your defense around one of them and both of them are the only options, you can't go wrong with either one.
Yeah. Steelers Freak says, no doubt Canada's play calling is lacking. That written, Pickett is missing open wide receivers, can't read schemes, and doesn't have NFL accuracy routinely.
And that's what I was talking about earlier with Kenny Pickett, because you asked me what my thoughts are with him. It's like, I'll always sit down here and root for him as long as he wears these colors and reps this and dons this logo. But it's like I'll always get on him too when he has a bad game. I'm going to say it. And this is our 10th game for a good again, just the best game that he's had in his career so far. But ever since that game, I've been watching this guy take steps backwards. Like, I see a guy who overthinks everything in the pocket. He over pursues everything. He stares down receivers. He doesn't survey the field. And his mind just doesn't move fast enough to process a decision. Like, when you're in the NFL, when I've always equated being a quarterback in the NFL to being a starting pitcher in baseball and being a boxer, because like starting pitchers in baseball, they get the most heat out of anybody else on a baseball team, the same way QBs do on an NFL team.
Right, because the quarterback's the most important position in the NFL. As much as I try to deny that, because it honestly annoys me how oftentimes it's the quarterback who wins regular season MVP.
I can't stand that either.
It's the quarterback who wins Super Bowl MVP. I'm like, okay, let's say, for example, Ben Roth, hypothetically.
You want a good example?
Go.
Super Bowl 40. It's like, everyone says, oh, Ben has 2 rings. Do you know we won that Super Bowl? Big Ben set an NFL record for the lowest QBR rating for a Super Bowl winning quarterback. We didn't win that game. We didn't win that Super Bowl because of Big Ben. We won that Super Bowl because of the defense and because of the gadget play that we ran coming off a Seattle turnover.
Seattle fans are not going to be happy about that one because they still say that Super Bowl was rigged.
There was definitely some bad calls in that game, but that was not the entire reason that we won.
Hey, I'm not the one saying that. But I know there's a lot of NFL fans and specifically Seahawk fans who are annoyed about that.
Yep.
But he says, man, I miss the old Steelers. Man, when we were winning championships nowadays since Dan Rooney passed away, has went down with it in this sad, man, you know I love winning, but the Steelers don't.
It just seems to be like, Tomlin's content with 9 wins now, which is a popular saying with us, but I just wish in general that we not take winning more seriously, but improving more seriously. Because if I sit down here and go yeah, I expect us to win the Super Bowl every year. No, I don't. That's unrealistic and it's unfair. Okay. I do, however, expect us to be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Yes. I mean, Steelers freak even said it right here. Max is on it. It's hard to jump from playing QB in college to the NFL. I think he meant you. But anyway, the schemes are 3 times more complex. The speed of the defense is 3 times faster. And the throwing windows are 3 times smaller. I mean, you're not wrong.
No, you're not wrong.
That is why there's so many QBs that get washed out.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was saying, with Kenny Pickett, his mind just moves too slow. When you're, like I said, with the pitchers in baseball and the QBs in football, nowadays in baseball with the pitch clock and all this stuff, split-second decisions. Pitching is fast. Being a QB is fast. Tom Brady, the guy was 45 years old and he could still process a decision quickly, And I also compared it to being a boxer, because when you're a boxer, you have to be willing to get knocked out yourself to knock out your opponent.
Yeah.
And Kenny Pickett nowadays has just been playing it too safe. Honestly, if Kenny Pickett was a boxer and he was going up against his opponent, he kind of reminds me of that guy that would just be boxing for points. He'd be doing this the entire time. Don't hit me. Throw a couple of jabs here and there. Don't hit me. You have to go in there, dukes up, take a couple of jabs yourself because you're going to get rocked as a QB. If you get sacked and you get put on your ass as a QB, oh well, it happens. You get knocked out as a boxer with a hook, oh well, it happens.
So let me ask you this.
Yep.
Do you think that sometimes Kenny Pickett gets too locked in on throwing it to specifically George Pickens
absolutely
and forgets about some of his other wide receivers, which it's hard to forget about Deontay Johnson, but because we know what he can do when he is healthy.
Absolutely, he does. And I've seen it multiple times this season because, Kenny Pickett, it's his stat of not having an interception in 5 games is very misleading. He should honestly have 6 or 7 more interceptions than what he has right now. And you want to know why that is? It's because he's forcing passes to one guy. And we all love the Pickett to Pickens connection over here. I do too. But when you get over reliant on one guy, defenses pick up on that. A good example is last week against Green Bay, where Kenny was rolling in the pocket. His first read was George Pickens when he was being double covered, never took his eyes off of him, and he tried to force a pass. Green Bay intercepted the ball, but the toe dragged out of bounds at the last second and it was incomplete. Thank God it was incomplete, but that's why I argue Kenny Pickett should have more picks this year than what he has right now because it's a very misleading stat for him not having a pick in 5 games. Where it was kind of like the opposite last year.
That was kind of Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of Kenny Pickett's interceptions last year were just very unfortunate circumstances. And now it's like the opposite this year. He should have more picks than what has happened because dumb luck has happened to him, you
Yeah,
know? But
that was part of my.
when
Was,
you're a quarterback rolling out in the pocket like that and you're staring down a receiver and he's being double covered and you have no other options, you have to either A, pick up yards on the ground with your legs and give yourself up, or B, step out of bounds.
yeah.
And Kenny Pickett's decision making has just been terrible this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we get on him the way that we do.
Yeah. That was part of my problem with Baker Mayfield when he was here, because we had Jarvis Landry, which I kind of wish we hadn't let him go at this point. But regardless, I felt like at times Baker Mayfield got way too locked in on only Jarvis Landry, and he went into that tunnel vision, kind of like what you're talking about with Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. And I'm like, there are other wide receivers and skill position players, I bet, that were open on that play. But you were
absolutely
looking at Jarvis Landry. I can't definitively say that about Deshaun Watson because we haven't gotten a big enough sample size from him in a Browns jersey to say like if he's that type of quarterback or not. I know what he was in Houston, but I can't get a read on him here in Cleveland. But we're going to have to wrap things up because I got to go eat so that I can get ready to go to work.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't it getting close to your work time?
Yep. I actually also have to work the Cavs game tomorrow night. So
oh yeah.
Because they're playing the defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets tomorrow night.
That should be a good game.
So I'll have to leave to head to the Rapid about midway through the third quarter or so it wouldn't have worked anyway. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming on the channel. Glad we were able to connect. I love talking Browns Steelers, or in this case, Steelers Browns. I'll try to pop into your live chat during the game tomorrow. It was a lot of fun commenting back and forth with you on YouTube and trying to figure it out, but glad we were finally, able to connect on Instagram. So we'll be in contact for the future. This isn't a one-time thing. I can tell you that.
Absolutely, brother. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to have me on here. It's always a pleasure to do stuff like this. Yeah, definitely. Let's stay in touch, and maybe next year or maybe even later in the season, we can have another chat like this. And, yeah, if trust me, man, if you want to see me lose my mind, my stream is the place to be tomorrow. Cause like what you see from me is what you get. This stuff is not scripted. It's not on a teleprompter. My reactions are genuine.
By the way, congrats on getting. I saw you got the raid last week from
Urinating Tree and Tom Grossi.
Yeah. Congrats on that, man.
Man, I did not expect that at all. Like, I've been watching you, Tree, for about 7 years now.
Steelers going to the Super Bowl.
That was something. Like, it was the equivalent of meeting one of your favorite celebrities,
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say this. Engraven Bids, big-time Baltimore Ravens fan. Norb Cam, huge Seattle Seahawks fan. They were the two primary guys that got me into wanting to be a YouTuber, but Tom Grossi was a big part of it also. Not as much Urinating Tree because he doesn't do the same type of content, but I still love him. But again, thank you so much for coming on, and maybe we can do some type of post-game show on Monday or something.
I'll have to see about that because, I work Monday through. I do have a short week next week, though, because it's Thanksgiving break, but I'll definitely let you know if I can.
All right. If it doesn't work out, we can talk in the future or something.
But, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. This is not going to be a one-time thing. I can tell you that. But in the meantime, thanks again, everybody who tuned in. We appreciate your participation in the live chat. If you haven't done so already, make sure you punch that subscribe button like a UFC fighter. Hit the like button with the Judas effect, courtesy of Chris Jericho, and deliver a curb stomp to the notification bell, courtesy of the World Heavyweight Champion, Seth freaking Rollins. Yes, I'm a huge wrestling and UFC fan. And go watch Full Gear tonight because it's going to be a fantastic pay-per-view. And go Pens.
Yeah, go Pens. We got the Hurricanes tonight, man.
Oh, that should be a fun one.
Yep. And then Vegas tomorrow.